Are you an introvert? Are you someone who shies away from putting yourself out there, who knows that they're really quite special, but doesn't want to shout about it and doesn't want to tell people about it because it just feels icky. It feels wrong and I don't want to do it. And it just really feels out of alignment. Well, today on the show, I've got the marvellous Gemma Stow. Gemma is the host of the Introverts Inspire podcast, and she works with female leaders who are introverted to be their best self and to be able to stand up and shine in the spotlight. So welcome to the show, Gemma.
Thank you for having me, Liz. I'm very excited to be here.
I am as well. Do you know, this conversation that we're about to have is, you know, we were talking before we pressed record about what we were going to talk about. And it almost feels like saying I'm an introvert almost feels a bit like a stigma, a bit like me saying, hi, I'm Liz, I'm an alcoholic. They're on different scales. I think saying I'm an alcoholic feels more stigmatized than saying, hi, I'm an introvert. But, you know, I spent 25 years in the tech industry in sales and marketing. And if I were to ever say, hi, I'm Liz, I'm an introvert, I would get people look at me going, oh, really? Because it was almost like the corporate culture in the tech industry, particularly for people in sales and marketing, is that you've got to be, you know, quite bold and out there and, you know, really, really kind of socially engaging. And as an introvert, I often don't feel like that inside. And sometimes I feel like I fake it till I make it. So why don't we just deal with your definition of what an introvert is and the kind of characteristics that introverts have?
Great question. And I think for me, an introvert is about personality. It's about energy for me. I think that's it's the best way to explain it. It's the way I talk about it because it's where you get your energy from. And introverts often prefer to be on their own. They re-energize on their own. They like to be in their own head, do deep thinking, maybe reading, learning, reflecting. And it's all that good stuff where we re-energize. Whereas the opposite of that is, you know, more extroverted people who love to get their energy from others. So they would go and be around more people to get their energy back. And for an introvert, that's tricky because you spend time with people and you're absolutely knackered and it wipes you out. And that's for me is the best definition. But I think there's a lot more to it and it's very individual as well. But introverts, they do get a bit of a bad negative rap, really, don't they? I mean, they have all these things they do. They're associated with being shy and being quiet and not being sociable, which is just not true. And I'm none of those things, but I am a proud introvert.
I love that, a proud introvert. I think I need to kind of connect with pride in kind of accepting who I am, because I think that's what actually my aversion to saying I'm an introvert is actually about. But when you were talking about energy and, you know, introverts get their energy from, you know, being alone, spending time with themselves, by themselves, or in quiet locations, whereas extroverts, you know, send them to a party even though they've been with people all week. I was just like, oh my God, that's my idea of hell. Don't send me anywhere on a weekend with loads of people if I've been peopling all week. Yeah. And I think for me, that's a really good indicator of where you are on the spectrum from introversion to extroversion, because it is a spectrum, isn't it? That, you know, there are shades of grey in that space. So where do you think you fit on the introversion extroversion spectrum?
It's interesting because I think we do move around on that spectrum as well. However, it's what I find fascinating, I know we've spoken about this before, Liz, is when people say, yes, I'm an introvert, but I can turn my extrovert on. And I'm like, oh, it's interesting, because on that spectrum, I guess it feels like you move in between them, when actually Are you turning your extrovert on? Do you feel the need to say that just so you don't feel, and maybe, that stigma that you mentioned, maybe that feeling embarrassed, I'm an introvert, what does that say about me? And it's, do we feel the need to go, but I'm okay and I can, be sociable and I can do that. I'm not a weirdo who sits at home and a recluse who sits at home on their own and doesn't leave the house. And I think there is an element of that. But for me personally, I think there's like 16 personalities that I kind of work with when I'm working with my clients, get them to identify themselves. And it's really interesting because they're so different. But, you can have introverts, extroverts, and all the different qualities that brings. And I think that's the clue really is to the qualities and strengths that it gives you wherever you sit on that spectrum.
Exactly. And, you said that a moment ago that there's a perception that introverts are shy, quiet, and unsociable.
Yes.
And I think neither of us would say that we were shy, quiet, or unsociable, but we both say, hey, I'm an introvert. So I think I agree. I think it's down to changing that kind of perception that introverts aren't loud, noisy, confident, sociable, because we are. I mean, you and I are both introverts and we've met in real life. And no one would say that we were shy, quiet, or unsociable by no stretch of the imagination.
Nope.
No, exactly. So where do you see, with the women that you work with, where do you see their introversion playing out as a negative in terms of their mindset and their confidence and their beliefs about themselves?
Well, I think it links to those stereotypes. So if they think that they know they are more introverted, then sometimes it can play into the limiting beliefs. And I find that introversion itself can almost become an excuse for not doing things. So I do speak to people who, they say, oh, yeah, I hate networking, don't like going to events much, I'm an introvert, And I think sometimes, well, actually, let's just get past that. And that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't get the best from networking. I believe introverts make the best networkers because of that deep connection that they're after. They might not want to go to the event and speak to everybody in the room or work the room, as they call it, but they more want to go and, meet a few people, have great conversations, get to know people. And that's why networking can really be a strength. But what I see is people are playing out these stereotypes, these labels, using it as excuses not to do the things that maybe they're avoiding. I call it hiding, actually. No more hiding is my thing. To help people to step up, to try new things. And it's all about, yes, I'm on a mission to kind of bust those myths around introversion, but it's also about people at an individual level. It's about self-awareness, because the more I learn about myself, the more I learn about introversion, the more I can use it to my advantage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolute sense. It's funny, when you were talking, I was thinking about labels. And, I started off by saying that, the stigma attached with me saying, hey, I'm an introvert is on the scale of, oh, hey, I'm an alcoholic. And I think labels can be really negative from our own perspective in terms of limiting us. So, for example, it's coming up to Christmas now. When I first got sober and got out of rehab, I think I got out at the end of October, and I went back to work, and we were in the Christmas party season. And I'm not too keen on Christmas parties. Well, I was before I went into rehab, because, hey, guess what? I got absolutely drunk. And I had a great time. I'd had drinks before I went out because that's what I did. I'd need that Dutch courage to give me confidence. But, put me in a room full of people without a drink inside of me, I felt really stripped back. And my introversion almost came out in full force. And it was like I had a huge fear around being social again, because I was just left with me. I didn't have my armour of, a glass of Pinot or whatever drink. Well, it was normally Pinot or Prosecco. I didn't have that kind of armour of that that drink to kind of numb me and kind of lose that social awkwardness. But once that was stripped away, I was like, oh my God, it's just me going into this big room with this group of people I know really well, who I've known for years. Why was I so scared? And it wasn't just about the drink. And it's funny, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But at the time, I would have said to you, it's because I'm worried I'm going to pick up a drink. I actually wasn't worried I was going to pick up a drink because, you know, I make a choice on a daily basis that I don't drink. And a bit like, I was thinking about this last night, actually. I'm a child of the 80s, and I remember the Wham video with Choose Life. And I've got this really strong visual memory of coming out of rehab and thinking, I've got a choice here to make, and I'm choosing life. And I literally had that vision of the George Michael in his T-shirt with Choose Life on it. So when I was, you know, going into those Christmas parties, I was thinking, I'm choosing life. I am, and I'm choosing life, and I'm not going to have a drink. And I had loads of strategies to make sure I didn't pick up a drink. I would tell people who knew I was sober that I was going. I would tell them what I was worried about, because my illness likes me to keep things secret. So if I share my fears, they're less likely to come true, is my experience. I would have people that knew I was going to an event, and if I phoned them during a 3-hour window, it was because I was in trouble, not because I'd picked up a drink, but perhaps I was thinking about it or something else. Anyway, I digress. But the point is, stripped of the booze, I'm left with just me. And I think that's the point at which my introversion kind of really came out as feeling like a problem. And it was at that point I felt like I really had to turn on this being sociable. And it was because I'd kept a really huge part of me, a huge major life change, secret. And I hadn't told anyone at work. Only my immediate family knew. None of the people around me who were used to seeing me drinking knew. And it was like this dirty little secret. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to do this stone cold sober. And it's just me. And it was difficult. It was really difficult. So in those situations where you're confronted with who you really are and feeling some discomfort because maybe you don't like it, because you're so used to behaving in different ways, how do you help women kind of get through that to the other side? So they, you know, I could easily have made a choice and said, right, I'm not going to those Christmas parties. I don't need to go any. In fact, there was one I didn't go to because I just knew it was safer for me not to go, but there were loads. So I went to the rest, but there was one specific one I didn't go to. So what would you say to women who are struggling with that need to be sociable? And maybe it's because in their career, there's events they have to go to, there's parties they have to attend, there's lunch dates they have to go to. I hate lunch, by the way. I hate eating with people for business. It drives me demented. Then I would have done it quite happily. So how do you help those women? And how, if I'd have met you at that period in my life, how would you have helped me, Gemma, with that kind of getting over myself and that desperate need to hide, but knowing I couldn't?
Well, I think it's not easy, is it, being stripped back and being vulnerable and admitting to yourself that actually I don't want to go to the parties, I don't want to be sociable, it's just not me. And I think what's important is with introversion, I think sometimes we often can hide behind it. And it's about getting really clear on what's important to you. So for me, it's like, making connections with people is important, but I need to find places where I can go and do that. I need to remember that might actually mean getting out, being sociable, but doing it in a way that feels good to me. And I think to do that, you need to know yourself and you need to know how you work, how you tick, what is going to feel good to you. And when I work with people, what we do is, and where we always start, is values, because that's so important. Values it's a word that gets thrown around all over the place, but it's a really important part of the work I do, because it's basically your view of the world. It's how you see others. It's how you see yourself. It's where your beliefs are made up. And it's like a map, really. And it's how you figure things out and make decisions. And so when you're in that place of not wanting to go to these events, not wanting to be sociable, it's about what is that really about for you? What's really going on? And to understand that, it's about understanding yourself and understanding what matters most. So that's where we start with values.
So how on earth would me or any of our listeners actually figure out what their values are?
Well, great question. Values are ultimately your view of the world. That's what a value is. And I guess it's easier to think of them as abstract words. So my top three are freedom, feminism, and family. So they're like my top three values, and they're really important to me. It's what matters most. But what you don't do is just stop there and go, oh, well, that's good then. I know what they are. It's about unpicking that.
Excellent. Can we unpick the feminism one? Because that intrigues me. Go on. Tell me more about feminism.
I'm a feminist, a very proud feminist. And that has just been in my blood my whole life. I think it's come from my mum. Well, actually, my mum and dad. I'd say my dad's a feminist. He had 5 daughters. I don't think he had a choice. But yeah, I've just always been about equality. Oh, it's not about women are better than men for me. It's none of that. I'm not like a right wing feminist. But I am about equality, and it's just there. It's always been there. I even studied it at university, which was amazing, by the way. I did, and learned a lot about, the Bible. We did a lot of research into that and the impact it has on women today. And yeah, I could talk all day about this, Liz.
Oh my God, it's see, if this is not God working, I don't know what is, because I invited you on to talk about introversion, and we're talking about feminism. And I have to say this because it's true. I don't actually know if I'm a feminist or not, because I don't really know what the definition of a feminist is. I know I could Google it. I mean, we can Google everything today. But what does being a feminist to you mean?
To me, it means standing up for women's rights, standing up for equality, being treated the same, getting the same opportunities. And also a big one for me is the language that's used around about women. And I still hear it now, it depends where you are. And it's something that's really, I feel like it's a superpower. And I think when I was younger, it maybe triggered me a lot. And then I would be more, not aggressive, it's a strong word, aggression, but because I was so passionate when I was younger, it could lead me to I'd challenge people when they said maybe derogatory things about women, or, the banter that you often hear. Oh, it's only a bit of banter. Well, it's not. And it's messages that trickle down generations. And I hear it now when people say things in front of my daughter, in front of my son. And I feel like it's a superpower because I pick up on it really easily. And it's interesting now because I think my husband does too. You won't listen to this, I'm sure, but and I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I see it in him. I'll see somebody in our kind of circle, they'll say something that's a little inappropriate, but for me, I can feel the hairs on my neck stand up. I can see him look at me now. He picked it up too. He knows. He just knows. And for me, that's brilliant, because that's what I want everybody to be like that it's antisocial. It doesn't need to be that way anymore. The banter, all that crap, it's still there in corporate, it's still there. And this is why actually my feminism and my introversion are very closely linked in the work that I do, because for me, this is why I work with female introvert leaders. It's about them standing up for themselves and for all women, and and stepping up and showing the world how amazing they are. Stop hiding it away. We want to see it, and we need to see it for change to happen.
Yeah,
so
because
that's my big picture. Yeah.
Oh, I love that, because thinking about it, if we want equality of opportunity, when the opportunity presents itself, you've got to be prepared for it, and you've got to be able to put your hand up and say, and literally say, that's for me, and go for it.
Absolutely.
And if it's about not hiding, it's about not hiding that you're the perfect person for that opportunity, or that you could be, or that, you know, if you had some guidance and some mentoring, you could be molded into the person for a specific role, a project, or whatever. So actually, it's really interesting, isn't it? How, you know, you said your three values were freedom, family, and feminism, that actually your business gives you an opportunity to really help women battle in the corporate world, because sometimes it is a battle. Let's be honest.
It is, and it's no coincidence that that's happened.
No.
Because what's happened is, on my journey, because I was a probation officer for about 8 years, then I left probation and opened up my own education centre for young people with challenging behaviour who were going to get kicked out of school. They came to us, and then on the back of that, I now work with female introvert leaders. The theme is unlocking potential.
Yeah.
And people don't believe it's there. Ultimately, that's what I do. But it's no coincidence that, you know, the work I do now is really strongly linked to my feminist values, you know, and the freedom values, all that, because I've learned about myself, and it's about self-awareness, and I know what work I need to do to feel like me.
Yeah.
And that's
how you can help others on that journey.
Exactly. And then you don't need that fake it till you make it. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still areas of my life that I'm working on. You know, nobody's perfect.
No.
But in my working world, I absolutely love being vulnerable, telling women it's not easy, telling other people that I've been hiding for years. You know, it's nothing to be ashamed about. But what I've learned is that, you know, no one's going to be as passionate about your ideas and the things you can bring to the table as you. So why let other people talk about it? You need to do it yourself. And I've learned that myself. And this is why I do what I do now. And I absolutely love it, because it's who I am.
And I could just feel the kind of passionate energy just rushing off you as you're talking.
Get goosebumps.
You are, yeah, absolutely. So we've completely gone on a tangent, and I love it, because, you know, we're supposed to go there. We are supposed to go there. So you're really clear on what your values are. So Gemma, how the hell am I going to find out what my values are?
For me, I think it's about carving out some time. And as an introvert, Liz, you will love spending time on your own.
I do.
I'm guessing, because you're just like me. And I love doing that too. And I think that's one of the strengths of introversion, is that you love your own company, and use that to your advantage when it comes to looking what your values are. Carve out some space, 10 minutes in the morning, get a cuppa, get a pen and paper, and start writing down what your values are. Maybe get rid of the word values and think about what's important to you, what matters to you the most. Start with one, you know, don't put pressure on yourself, and write that word down. And then ask yourself why. Why does it matter? Why has that word come to you? What does it mean to you? But then don't just stop there, because I think it's really easy when you're on your own to go, oh, well, done that now, journaling, tick, and then go and make a cuppa, or get in the shower, or sort the kids out of school, or whatever. It's really easy to be distracted from actually going a little bit deeper, digging deeper, which is what I do with my clients. You know, if I asked you now, Liz, what are your values? You would have to give me an answer, right? You know, not necessarily. And that's why I absolutely love silence, because I let people have that space to grow and to challenge themselves. But even on your own, you can do this. You know, just dig a little bit deeper. Once you've answered that question about what's important to you, why? Why is it important? And then get an answer for that, write it down, and then ask again, why is that important? And keep going and just see what comes out. You could be really surprised, because in my values work that I do with my clients, which is where we always start, because I think it's really important to get that foundation. Values are like magnets, you know, they push and pull you in different ways. And I think we always think, oh, values are good and positive, and they are usually, but they can also hold you back. You know, the thing that you think is core to you, like my feminism, for example, you know, it does hold me back as well, because that will come up in times of making decisions, and I need to be really aware of it.
How does it hold you back? I don't understand.
Well, I guess, okay, for many years, held back voicing my opinions that I really wanted to say, because I had so many men in my life that I loved dearly, like my dad, my husband, and now I've got my son as well. And I think, am I offending them by talking about women all the time? You know, by bigging up women? And what I came to realize by doing work on myself and on this journey I'm on, is that I learned actually it's about them as well. You know, I went to this, it was about suffragettes. It was a really cool thing in York, and it was like a theatre production, but it started on the streets of York and then you went into the theatre. And there was crowds and people had come come into the show, but had got really into the spirit of things. And there was a guy with a banner, and actually it's on my Instagram page if you want to see it, but there's a guy with a banner with a big cardboard sign pointing down with an arrow to himself saying, "This is what a feminist looks like." And it was a man, and I was like, I've got to have a selfie with that guy. But it's true. And I think, for a long time it held me back from being who I really needed to be and wanted to be, because I thought I was upsetting other people around me.
No, it's funny actually. You were just talking about the suffragettes, because completely random side note here, listeners. We've got a general election coming up in the UK. I think it's Thursday, the 12th of December. So it's after this episode comes out. And because it's on the news a lot, my son's 15. He says, "Mum, who are you going to vote for?" And I just give him a look, and he says back to me, "I know women chained themselves to the railings so you could have a free vote." And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So, for example, on social media, there's loads of people in my network that are talking about different political parties, and they're all sharing their opinions. And do you know what? I do not share my political opinions, and I'll tell you why. And this is where the feminist in me comes out. Because back in the day, when women first got their vote, it was so that they got their vote, not their husband's vote. And I think of all those women that fought to get me as a woman today, my vote, I literally got a free vote, and I don't have to tell anybody who I'm voting for. It's no one else's business. And I certainly don't have to tell my son or my husband or my parents or my social network who I'm voting for, because it's none of their goddamn business. And it comes back to that. What did those women fight for? And it was that free vote, that I could be free from any pressure from anybody in terms of me making my personal decision. So actually, I'm really passionate about this subject. So we had a referendum in the UK for any of our non-UK listeners called, and it led to what's called Brexit, the British exit from the European Union. And on the day of the vote, I said to my husband, "I'm going down to vote. Are you coming with me?" And he said, "No." I went, "Okay." I said, "But listen, if you do not go, you cannot talk about the results. You cannot talk about the impact of it. You have no voice to even comment on what's on the television or in the news, because you didn't exercise your democratic right to vote." And guess what? He didn't vote. And every time in the last 3 years, Brexit has come on the telly. And trust me, if you watch the news, it's on virtually every single day. I'm like, "Oh, did you vote?" "No." And I literally, no, because well, anyway, I could go on for this for hours. But I'm actually, when it comes to voting and suffragettes, my feminist streak is really bang on. So I will take it to my deathbed who I vote for, because that's what those women, and some of them did die, didn't they, during the suffragette period? Yes, that's what they fought for, so women like me could have a vote.
Exactly.
Anybody.
So use your votes.
Make sure use your votes. Yeah.
God, we could talk about this all day, Liz, couldn't
we? Oh, we could, but we can't, because we're short of time. So look, we've gone completely round the houses. So we've talked about the hiding thing. And you know what? That man with his sign saying feminist. Now, if that is not an example of someone owning who they are and what they believe, I don't know what is. So give us some other examples of how you own who you are and stand up for what you believe in. How does that manifest itself in your actions and in your behaviour?
well, I guess the feminist thing we've touched on, but also the introvert thing, you know. And I think it's about, for me, it's about boundaries, and being true to who I am means also having to say no and say yes to people when I want to, and being confident in my decisions. And it's not always been like that, you know, for a long time before I kind of learned more about introversion and learned that actually it was holding me back. And in my previous business, for example, I much preferred to be behind the scenes. In fact, I convinced myself that's where I should be, and so that everybody else could go out and do that. And I think, you know, learning about that has enabled me, if not empowered me, to be more of myself, and that's okay, and that I can, you know, it's good enough, and I can be out there and I can be visible, and I don't have to fake it. I don't have to put on a mask. And to me, that's me living my values, and understanding the most important thing to me, which is connecting with people. And I used to avoid that. It's crazy, really. And it's ironic, because I used to avoid networking. I'd avoid selling, promoting, you know, I'd avoid standing on a stall and letting people walk past me and have to talk to them all day, because I thought, oh my God, that's exhausting and I don't want to do that, which was about my introversion, really. But now I enable myself to go, right, well, what's the best way for me to make connections? Because I love connecting with people. I am sociable. I don't have to do it like everybody else says I should do it. And I find the ways that matter to me. And that's what it's all about. So that's the way I live out my values.
Love it. Gemma, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an honour and a privilege to have you in my life, and I consider you one of my really good friends. So thank you for being there for me over the last 2 years that we've known each other. You've held me and held the space for me to cry on occasion, to laugh, to do little happy dances with me. So thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. And, you know, listeners, if you want to learn more about Gemma, all of the details are in the show notes. Tell us where people can find you, Gemma.
Well, I'm always on LinkedIn. So if you are on there, come find me on LinkedIn. I'm always there. I love it there. And my website is gemmastow.com. So you can find all the information you need to. But yeah, get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. And Liz, can I just say thank you to you too? Because, you know, you've been there for me so many times, more than you'll actually know. And it's made such a difference to my world. So I could speak to you all day long.
Oh, God bless you. So could I, but we can't, unfortunately.
But we can't, because listeners don't have all day to listen to us keep talking. I love you.
Love you too. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Today I Am Sober podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I love your feedback. So come and find me on social media. All of the links are in the show notes. Until next time, bye.